Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in and joining us for this discussion, whether you're watching with us live or from the future. We're grateful to be able to connect with you. I'm Natasha Sinha. I'm the Associate Artistic Director at Playwrights Horizons. And this year, under an exciting new umbrella called the Lighthouse program, we launched a public art series with the brilliant Abram Finkelstein and David Zinn. We've shown installations by Jilly Ballistic, Ken Gonzalez-Day, and Dred Scott. And today, we're thrilled to dive into the fourth installation in this series by Jess X. But first, since I'll be hanging out here to help with accessibility, I'll add that I am an Indian American woman with glasses and black hair that I finally got cut yesterday for the first time in the pandemic. I'm wearing an orangey red top, and I'm in my apartment with my usual justice decor behind me that's kind of perfect and appropriate for tonight, but true every day. I also wanted to add that we're grateful to have a theater ourselves, a physical building that is our home base, though we're not in it right now. Playwrights Horizons acknowledges that our theater, located on the island of Mannahatta, is situated on land that is Lenape-Hoking, homeland of the Lenape. We pay respect to the Lenape peoples, Lenape elders, and their ancestors, past, present, and future. As our theater's work and community extends beyond this island, we also acknowledge that the Northeast is the homeland of many Indigenous nations. Playwrights Horizons pays respect to all Indigenous peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations and to their ongoing contributions culturally, intellectually, artistically, and spiritually. And because we're gathering digitally, we also want to give a shout out to Adrian Wong of Spiderweb Show in Ontario, which maybe also feels appropriate for tonight since Jess has roots in Canada. Adrian invites us to take a moment to consider the legacy of colonization embedded within the technologies, structures, and ways of thinking that we use every day. So all of this is incredibly interwoven into the art and values that we'll be talking about tonight. So while I know I personally am really curious about how these sorts of sensitivities about our land, about how to reach one another and ease inclusivity, I'm curious about how they grow and develop beyond the more mainstream steps that they've taken this past year. But tonight, they're absolutely intentional and organic to this panel discussion, and that's going to be real clear very soon. We're so lucky tonight to have three incredible artists from the Asian diaspora with us. And personally, it's exciting for me since the Asian diaspora is hugely varied, and it's rare to focus a lens entirely on multiple folks from within this very expansive community, right? And initiate conversation from there. So I'll introduce our panelists now as they all come on screen to join me here. Please join me. Awesome. Hello. So happy to see you all. So first and foremost, we have the reason we're here today, Jess X. Jess's installation is up in our building right now, and I hope you'll all have a chance to visit it in person. I finally did yesterday, and it's going to be up for a few more weeks, and I encourage you to head over to 42nd Street and see it yourself. The embodied experience of it in person is really special in a very different way than watching the video otherwise. Okay, intros. Jess X. is a film director, public artist, poet, children's book author, and community arts educator who creates queer Asian immigrant stories that transcend borders and binaries. Through narrative film, large-scale murals, children's books, and community art education, they work toward a future where BIPOC folks witness themselves as heroic on big screens and city walls. Their work has been supported by the Tribeca Film Institute, the Ford Foundation for Social Justice, the Smithsonian Asian Pacific Center, and many others. They're also currently in development for their first feature film. You may have also seen their artwork in international protests and social movements. We're also so lucky to have with us Wo Chan, aka the illustrious Pearl. Wo is a poet and drag performer and winner of the 2020 Nightboat Poetry Prize and author of Togetherness, coming in 2022. Wo is a member of the Brooklyn-based drag burlesque collective Switch and Play and has performed at places like the Whitney and MoMA, and has received fellowships from places like McDowell and the Asian American Writers Workshop. Wo was also editor of the Lambda Literary Review. And finally, I'm so happy that Adriel Luis can join us. Adriel is a community organizer, artist, and curator who works on bridging artistic integrity and social vigilance. He's a curator of digital and emerging practice at the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center. He's also part of the Illiteracy Arts Collective, which creates music and media to strengthen Black and Asian American coalitions. In the past, Adriel curated projects in a range of venues, including the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., and MoMA. He's also spoken at the Tate Modern, Yale University, the China Academy of Fine Arts, and others. So welcome to all of you. I'm so glad that you could all join us for this conversation that we get to share with the world now and later. And for everyone watching, as you can tell from those bios, these are people who are doing a lot, and not only in one space or realm or pathway. This feels like really meaningful and intentional, since the artwork that leads us to this conversation is about transcending boundaries and defaults and forms. At the crux of this discussion is your installation, Jess, entitled "In the Future, Our Asian Community is Safe." So to position us to this work, to what we're talking about here, in case everyone hasn't seen the installation on 42nd Street yet, we want to tell you a little bit about it. So the installation is comprised of a film as well as a still, and the still features Yu Wo. And the Playwrights Horizons installation falls under this banner of "In the Future, Our Asian Community is Safe." And that is happening alongside a beautiful installation downtown with Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, where you are a curator, Adriel. So knowing it's different to experience something like this on screen versus on the streets of Midtown alongside other people, let's watch that video right now so that we all know what we're moving forward to talk about. Incredible. Oh, thank you so much for creating that, Jess. And for the folks who are watching, I'm not sure if the sound was working. If it's not, you should check out the video. It's on our website at Playwrights Horizons. But Jess, that's so beautiful. To kick us off, can you tell us a little about why you needed to make this and why you're drawn to public art as a way to communicate? I'd love to hear you talk about the possibilities for imagining and for visioning forward through public art.
Hi, so my name is Jess, and I'm a Chinese Canadian person, and there's a moon background behind me, and I'm wearing a shirt that has cranes on it. So I created this, like I started this body of work called "In the Future, Our Asian Community is Safe." Kind of as a response to the violence that's been happening specifically to Asian femmes and elders and members of our community since COVID-19, and I felt like a lot of the media that was coming out in response to the violence felt like it was re-traumatizing, and I just felt like I was caught in an endless doom scroll that was affecting my mental health. So like this project started because I created this this previous piece called Asian American Meditation Portal, and it basically was an illustration that featured elders and youth in our community walking towards a portal on the horizon, and on the portal it said, in the future our Asian American community is safe, and then there was like a 2-minute meditation, and I realized that a lot of activists and organizers and also just like people in community were responding to this piece because it had offered a place for us to like grieve and also imagine together. And I realized that it could be used both as like a calming, healing tool, and also as an organizing tool for us to imagine the future together. So then the project expanded, and I've been working with Adriel and also my friend May Lum from Wayne on Woe, which is one of the oldest running storefronts in Chinatown, and we created a mural with Chinatown youth and elders like in New York Chinatown. And along the same time I was working on this installation, and I realized that I've been making films that features a lot of footage of members of the Asian American community caught in moments of solace, and also like kind of us reclaiming our power. So I wanted to like create an installation that captured all these moments and put them together in like a really public way, so that when viewers are walking by the mural in Chinatown or like walking by Times Square, they're like kind of like invited to take a moment of solace and like kind of watch us on a monumental scale and stuff. And I think that's where public art can be like a tool towards healing, and can be like a portal for us to imagine the future, and hopefully use the power that it gives us to like organize towards a future where we are safe and we are free.
So beautiful. What does it mean to you both, Woe and Adriel? I'm curious to hear you. I feel like we were all like nodding and just loving this piece so much, and I'm curious to hear what you're both thinking.
Thank you, Jess, for capturing me in my solace. It's quite a gift. I'm Wo Chan. I'm a poet and a drag performer. I use they, them pronouns. As for visual description, I am an Asian American person sitting here with side-swept hair, orange glasses, and a blue and white striped Ralph Lauren kind of overcoat. I'm in my kitchen. There's a little brick wall by me, and then a blank wall with a light switch, which is unseemly, but what can you do? I love so much of what you said, Jess. I loved so much of what you said. Not just like the goal of being reflected in the world, but being projected to be heroic, to be monumental. That's, it's quite, I think it's a wonderful overcorrection, and I think we need more of it for sure. I love the idea of this this work of art stopping someone on their way to work when they're in their thoughts, like, oh, do I have time to stop for a bagel? Oh my God, that person in the corner, maybe I should step a little further away. And then you turn left and it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know that the world could look like this. Oh my gosh, that's someone that looks like me. I didn't know I could look like this. And I love, because it's like the closest thing to awe-inspiring nature that we have in this city, right? Is this monumental work of art that really lifts you out of these systems that you're trying to navigate on a day-to-day basis. Like, am I going to be late to work? Am I going to be attacked if I go home too late? I think it's, like you said, an incredible portal that you open for people, and it's so beautiful. It's so glamorous, and captivating. Immediately the sound hits you and you're transported to another place.
Yeah. I love what I just love everything that I'm hearing right now. I am an Asian person. My family comes from Toisan, China, through Hong Kong, Mexico, and then over to Turtle Island out here. I'm wearing an upcycled blue shirt from my friend Milana Sutton that I picked up during one of my last trips traveling pre-pandemic in Aotearoa. And I feel left out as the only person here not wearing glasses. But I have a forehead that will get shinier and shinier throughout the hour. So heads up. Um, I, I love what you're saying around catching people walking through the streets that are sort of in this automated mode. Like this pandemic has really been an opportunity for many of us, not all of us for sure, but many of us to rethink or to even just think about how we've been going about our lives and to switch course, slow down, change pace, whatever it may be. What I love about public art, which includes murals, but also includes graffiti, even tagging, is this idea of snapping out of it for even a quick second, right? Like, I mean, graffiti culture, so much of it was born and proliferated through hip hop culture in New York City, in the South Bronx, through Black and brown neighborhoods. And the idea is you're walking through this city, this metropolitan environment where all these buildings were built without the permission of indigenous communities, without consultation from community. And so as a tagger, the role of the tagger or the public artist, the muralist, is to make a mark that helps someone break from that zone of automation, right? I'm walking down the street and there's all these pristine walls and then I see a scribble. For a quick second, it helps me understand that there's humanity still, right? And I think that that's really where this installation at Playwright Horizons takes it, where this mural that we've done with Wow Project takes it, is to not only allow for people to snap out of wherever it is that they may be, but also to provide an entry point where they may rest into, and to let them know that should they choose to enter this portal, that there will be a loving community to welcome them in. And I think that is really what compels me to be a curator, and the reason why I'm so drawn to collaborating with Jess, and why I'm so excited to be here with Wo and Natasha.
Yeah, there's something automatically sensory and visceral and community based in public art, because it's public, it's in the midst of things, especially when you're talking about a busy city, and especially when it's New York City, especially when it's 42nd Street and Chinatown. I mean, talk about like just activity swirling around. And Adriel, I guess I was just thinking of like, do you see your curating as community organizing? Do you see them as sort of the same thing? Because I guess it's something that, as someone who curates and programs for theater, it's a question turning around in my mind all the time too. And you do so much work in those spaces in ways that you could see them as separate or actually really collapsed and towards the same goals.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been working at the Smithsonian as a curator since 2013, but prior to that, I was not a part of the museum world. And so I know a lot of us, when we think of Smithsonian, we think of like Night at the Museum, we think about sort of, I don't know, I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing, so we think of like Blathers the owl, and just kind of all like, uptight, this sort of very formal museum atmosphere, which is very unfamiliar to a lot of us in our communities. I grew up in the Bay Area in Ohlone land, where there's a deep history of art and culture being shared through museums, but also through block parties, through poetry slams, open mics, and that's really where I came up. And so I see my role at the Smithsonian as one that challenges the institutional framing of where art can thrive. And so, yeah, I feel that when we're talking about art, when we're talking about what it means to really resonate with community, it doesn't always necessarily have to mean bringing more people into a museum, right? Oftentimes, it means meeting folks where it's at, where folks are at, speaking a language that's familiar, and in that way, we're not just sort of like indoctrinating people into some sort of system, right? I think that, for example, Natasha, when you talk about theater, I think about theater and the understanding of theater in the beginning being something that was, the audience wasn't super quiet, right? Like there was a lot of call and response, like kind of during Shakespearean times, a lot of call and response. People, if they felt something about it, they would laugh, they would boo, they would do this, do that, and back, I remember, back in the day when I was mainly performing spoken word, once I was part of a theater festival off Broadway, and trying to do a spoken word performance and get some audience feedback from like an audience that's trained in like the theater where the RE was so difficult, right? And that was one of my first experiences in understanding that it's like, okay, well, here's where I can make a decision. I can either change how I do my work in order to fit into this existing tradition that is very unfamiliar to me, or I can, carve some space, contribute to alternative schools of thought, and I feel like with these murals, with what Playwright Horizons is doing, it's really showing an expansion of that portal that I began seeing, that one time that I was in that theater.
Yeah, everything feels really porous in terms of what you're talking about. It's also making me think of whoa, like as a poet and a drag performer, and also part of these spaces, like you're part of so many different spaces, and I'm curious, like what interaction that feels like it has with theater, with public art, with social justice, with like all of these different areas that are being touched on at the same time through all the work that we're talking about right now. How does your sort of identities as poet, as performer, sort of meld together, or do you feel like you get forced to separate those parts of you, or does it feel like it's one and the same?
That's a good question. I think ideally you don't have to separate it. To me, it's all a way for me to learn more about how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking about. It's a way for me to walk into the mystery of being a person. I think art is so important for that, and I think that's why it's such a powerful tool as an individual and as a community too. When we can collaborate and activate each other's curiosities about each other and our own histories, when we can bring the best out of our community and utilize everyone's skills to make things beautiful and humongous. I think when it comes to marketplaces, I've had to, sometimes check a box, literally when I'm applying for grants sometimes, right? And as artists, we know that grant applying, it's like life or death, for many people, we live on it. But I'm glad that I've had both poetry and drag as tools for me to understand more about what I want for my life. What drag can't do, poetry does for me, and what poetry can't do, drag does. Mm-hmm. I have a book coming out next year, my first book of poetry, and I'm really struggling with editing it right now because there were poems I wrote many years ago, trained at the University of Virginia, where I got my poetry degree, and at NYU, and I felt that so many of my impulses, so much of what I was taught was how to write about my trauma in a way that was understandable and marketable. And we don't say those words, right? We say like lyric or compelling or I don't know, whatever. Sorry. But I find it hard to look back on those poems and think, okay, I guess I put all this work into it. I'm going to put this in a book. But throughout all that, I'm so glad I had drag. A lot of my book is about growing up in a Chinese restaurant. I'm a restaurant kid. Sound off if you're a restaurant kid and you in the YouTube audience. Oh yeah, are you a restaurant? Yeah, I'm a restaurant kid. And in my early 20s, I went through a really intense deportation process. I had to fight deportation. My mom, my dad, and I had to. I basically had to spearhead this because, you know, kid who fills out all the forms, right? So I think back now, and I'm so angry that in my early 20s, I was learning how to fill out cancellation of deportation forms rather than learning about myself and what I wanted in my life and what I wanted from my community and how I wanted to be loved or just feeling desired in the world. I had to put that aside and I had to do these technical awful things. I learned about my own family history by reading my own FOIA forms about my parents' like immigration process, and that's how I know where when my dad came to the States, when he lived this place, how much money exactly he had in his bank account at a certain age. It's violence, you know. It's really difficult to come up in this country as a migrant person, as an immigrant, as a person of color. I'm just speaking for myself, these identities. And it took away, I think, the chance for me to understand that, like, as a human being, I'm a mysterious entity with so much to explore. So I'm glad to have had art and many forms of art in my, you know, however many years I've been alive, to relieve some of that, the pressure of being oppressed, of living under systemic violences, and also just to open up more spaces for me that are private and that are beautiful and that make me laugh. You know, I love to sit and think of a thought and think, how incredibly funny of a phrase. What if I made that into a costume or a gown? And that's drag, right? And that's performance art. And I'm also just like, on the last thing, like, in terms of theater, I never officially have taken a theater class. I've never officially have done theater. It just wasn't, I did choir, I did performance or singing. But I think other people, when they see me on stage, recognize like, oh, this is the same energy that we're looking for. And I'm also really glad that those people have recognized that and invited me into their spaces. Yeah.
Definitely. I've seen you on stage at drag shows and like absolutely captivated in a way that does remind me of theater. And I think there's something about like a translation of where you're able to articulate these parts of yourself that are so defined and categorized by the world, but they don't have to be. And again, I think that's part of what you're putting forward, right, Jess, is like this like dissolving of any of that. And I think especially in New York City, it's easy to think of art in quote unquote in the professional sense of theaters and museums and physical spaces. And but like, for example, with the art created under this banner of "In the Future Our Asian Community is Safe," Jess, you made this in collaboration with elders from Chinatown and all kinds of folks who may not traditionally be perceived as quote unquote professional artists, but it feels like it's really just about an element of control that comes with professionalism, as well as with indoor spaces. So it feels really connected actually to like this pandemic and social distancing and having to be outside, and then creating these pieces that are outside is just really interesting to think about. And yeah, I don't know, Jess or Adriel or anyone or Woe, if you want to talk about like creating this piece and hearing about how it was created. And Jess, I was following like on Instagram in your stories about the downtown mural and how you created it, who you created it with, and the whole community of people who come together to put this thing forward that then leads to healing and to sort of reclaiming. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and tell us how that felt and why it was important? And it almost feels like modeling a new way forward.
Yeah, so this is probably the series of work is probably one of the most emotionally fulfilling and healing things that I've I've done in my artistic career up to this date. And it's because I just like really care about whatever institution, whatever like I wasn't doing this at all with anything in mind other than just like having a good time and having a healing experience, or just like a fulfilling experience with the communities involved. And I think I just hit a point during the pandemic where I just got like so depressed because I was looking for validation from these institutions that were just constantly like rejecting me, and looking for validation from people who weren't giving that to me. And I just hit a point where I was just like I have lost myself somewhere in this capitalistic mindset that like the work has to go through these certain gatekeepers to be seen. And I think a lot of that like felt like kind of a reliving of childhood trauma of like seeking validation from like people in my family who are never gonna give that to me. And I felt like I was replaying that within like the career of like being an artist and stuff. And I just hit a point in the pandemic where it was just like the grief of the violence that was happening against our communities, and then just like feeling really depressed. And then as the world was opening up, I kind of just like created this call for like a mural wall. And then just like the right collaborators just showed up, and I had a phone call with Adriel, and then Adriel was like, let's make a mural, let's make this happen. And then like my friend May, who's the owner of Win on Woe projects, they have a youth program, and I already did a workshop at that youth program, and then everything just happened, and we planned a few workshops with youth in the WOW projects program, and we had elders come for like a community photo session where people were invited to bring like objects that bring healing and solace to them. And then like Adriel and I like co-taught a workshop, and then I had a photo session with the elders. And I just felt like my job as an artist was really just to like create a composition where all these elements that the communities brought in was could be like put together, and to kind of like be the person who just like puts the composition together, as opposed to like being the source of all the stories. So I felt like I was kind of like it just felt like the cultivation of space for us to like create healing together and create the future that we dreamed. And then people would see this project on Instagram, and then people who I haven't talked to all pandemic would show up and be like, I want to paint and stuff. And I think the most inspiring thing to me was just seeing like my friends who are these incredible indigenous activists come and like show up and help paint, and just seeing the ways that all of these marginalized communities of color like show up for each other and show solidarity for each other, and that gave me hope. And I think like the definition of the future is like the future that I dream is like an abolitionist future where Black communities, indigenous communities, Asian communities, migrant communities all come together to like support each other and create alternative ways of caring and protecting each other without relying on the police and without relying on the state.
I walked by the mural today on my way to get my sesame ball for breakfast. And I saw it being made, but I hadn't seen it finished. And I was still just shocked by how beautiful. Like, it was like, I fully have seen this in process. And then I saw it today. I was like, this is incredible. And I love what you said with your job as an artist is to create the composition, because that is really how you access what is mythological in someone's head, right? So in this way, I maybe make this connection with like, oh, these elders, these folks in my life, I've known them all along. I just never knew how to imagine them or see them in this heroic way. And I love how you put it so simply, where it's like, my job as an artist is to compose what is already there and to translate this for you and like open this way of seeing for like anyone who walks by. Yeah, it worked on me. It worked.
Yeah, also one more thing. I think what you were saying about the role of the artist is to create a composition. It just makes me think about like the ways that we're taught the role of the artist is to be somebody who like captures someone inside this frame and then it's put in the white walls of a museum. And that just feels very colonial because that's the way where the Western world teaches us to like make art. It's like something that we own and we capture and it's ours. But I feel like in order to reimagine art in a way that is hopefully like decolonial is like doing like just knowing that like people's humanity and people's beauty is already there and all we have to do is to like kind of like reimagine it in a more heroic way, but the heroicness is already there. It's just kind of like how do we like show the frame, I guess, of what is of the beauty and the mystery that is already there. And hopefully that's something that I'm trying to explore, but I feel like it's a lifelong journey as an artist. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, echo what both of you, Wo and Jess, are saying about this idea of composition and what it means for art to exemplify community, especially in this era where, there are so many forces that are, where the message is like, you should be an artist because that's what's going to make you popular and that's what's going to put you on the map and get you, like your prominence on social media and this and that. And it becomes so much more about the individual as opposed to the art itself or the community. And I think that drag, public art are, these outside of institutional frameworks, these mediums are what really remind us of what art is and how it came about in the first place, right? And I know that Natasha, we're focusing a bit more on the installation at Playwright Horizons, but if we could pull up the mural one more time, just because I think that I just wanted to walk through some of the thoughtfulness that Jess stewarded, because it also is reflected in the installation at Playwright Horizons, right? So, for example, shout out to family-owned businesses in Chinatown. Family-owned businesses of Chinatown, and Jan Lee, who offered this wall to us on Moscow Street, which is, for the New Yorkers there, it's Mott and Bowery, so it's a very central area of Chinatown. Translated into ad space, it would be like considered like prime location, and but the fact that Jan offered it for as a community offering is really where this begins. We also wanted to recognize the fact that Chinatown, as deep as the history is, it's built on Lenape land, and so these plants were chosen specifically to represent indigenous plant life of Lenapehoking. And so in the center, for example, that's bloodroot. We have some wild ginger, plants that are native to the land to recognize the fact that even though this is a place that has long supported immigrant communities, it's only done so by way of a deeper history, a deeper indigenous history of Lenape folks. The people that are portrayed in this portrait and the hands clasped, these are in Jess's interpretations of photos that she took during a community photo shoot that came after a brainstorming session that Jess had mentioned with young folks. The textiles that you see sort of like on the bottom, that the people are wearing, these are reflecting various Chinese, including ethnic minority folks. We wanted to recognize, for example, what's happening in Xinjiang and the Uyghur communities. And so there's like a lot of thought that goes into this mural that, like, as much as it blows people away when they first see it, like a good piece of art, the more you look at it, the more you see that comes out of it. And the same thing is the case with the Playwright Horizons installation. Is taking clips from Little Sky, from After Earth, from films that Jess put together, and each of those films were also done with that same level of community outreach. Like with After Earth, for example, we have Kit Yan in the YouTube audience, and Kit offered their mother and the relationship with the family as a part of the story of After Earth, and we consulted with Hina Wangkalu, who is who is a well-regarded person among the Kanaka Maoli folks, and so when we think about how we talk about art, how we show art, it's not just the end product, right? It's really this entire process, and that process is oftentimes missed when you just sort of like see it in a gallery, behind a display case, through glass, and you can't touch it, right? And so, just wanted to applaud you, Jess, for really what you've done here with all these installations, because they really reflect so much of what we need in our community right now.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I just wanted to say one more thing. Thank you so much, both of these works of art. I just wanted to say that none of these works would be possible without the support of community, and these pieces are like a lot of them are only exist because of the strength of the relationships that are like mutually reciprocal relationships with the people involved. Like After Earth was written by Kit Yan, who is in the film, and Kit's mom was in it, and also was like just a large collaboration between us as well. And like Little Sky would not have been possible without Wo's trust and vulnerability of like trusting me as a director to like create this character of Sky, where Wo brought a lot of themselves into it, and it was their first time in a portraying or being an actor or non-actor in a narrative film. So I just wanted to thank all the people in my community who worked so hard to bring these projects to life and allowed me to see them. So yeah.
Jess, that's beautiful, and I was hoping I could make space for you to say, because I know you feel that way, and it's such a core part of your art, and it's that generosity is what makes it so incredible. And I think sometimes people think of like great art as needing, something that is way more selfish, something that is way more about one person and whatever. And so it's just so beautiful to hear you articulate all of that. And Adriel, thank you so much for talking us through the mural. I was hoping you would do that, because it's also, I mean, like the scale of the murals too, it just always takes me by surprise and just shows what possibility there is when community is like activated and held and pointed in the right directions that are right for them. Like I'm just jumping out of my skin looking at that, trying to go downtown and see it myself. And this idea of like a nuanced collective that is aimed at like really great goals, this collective idea of prompting multiplicity from everyone's individual perspective is so beautiful. And the framing of gorgeous complexity that's already there, like you were saying, it's just like a really beautiful thought, and it's the way forward. And I think there's so much conversation, especially this past year, about reimagining. And I feel like people are, Adriel, like you're saying, like waiting for products or like items or things at the end of something, but it feels like this process, the journey of it is actually what it is. It's a practice rather than a thing that you reach at the end. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. And what this is all about is so staggering. It's what we need right now. The idea that none of us are free until all of us are free feels really like central to your work, Jess. It centers Asian communities, and it's also about solidarity with all oppressed communities, right? And so I'm curious if you want to, or if anyone wants to speak to what feels right about focusing on these particular communities while also constantly adding context about how like violence is being aimed at Black communities and other communities in huge ways, and basically why and how liberations are attached to, why the idea of liberation is attached to any.
I'm happy to kickstart it a little bit, and then so Jess is saying in the chat, word. Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking so much about interconnectedness especially being out here in Tongavar. You know, in one of the core beliefs in Tongva understanding of the world is that all beings are people. We happen to be human people, but when you think about all beings as people with personhoods, and not just the plants and animals, but also the minerals, the waterways, you know, then then we treat the world accordingly, and we understand that our community is larger than and more vast and more complex than just sort of like what what seems the most obvious, and I think that is such an important orientation because when you set the bar that high in terms of what is encompassed in your community, who is encompassed in your community, then you can see so much more. If you limit who you see as community based on, there's a prerequisite that they have to be of the same race or they have to be of the same gender identity. And then from there, you start shaving down who is in your community, you end up with such a limited scope of how you can feel and who you can feel, and so when I think about bound liberations specifically, or as Robin Wall Kimmerer, who's a Native American scholar, as well as Audre Lorde, who is a Black poet, both have this language of mutual flourishing, and this idea of mutual flourishing is, you see it everywhere in nature, like you try to, you call a certain plant a weed, and then you try to eradicate it. You also mess up the waterways. Then you mess up those waterways, and then you also mess up the fish and the birds, and then eventually you end up hurt yourself, right? It's that short-sightedness of thinking that if I just go for my own self-interests, then everything is going to be all good. I think that that's what we've been, what many of us who who are based out here in the United States, that's part of the welcome package, right? When you sort of like come into American life, and I think that that's when we talk about decolonization, it means not only recognizing the fact that there's problematic history, but also unraveling those systems and doing our best to make sure that we're not perpetuating those. And so, of course, the ways that we are being treated, and the ways that we are affected in society is based on these assignments of race and gender and sexuality and things like that. But the idea is for us to also recognize this common personhood, right? That and that's something like, Natasha, what you said, like we're entangled in this, whether or not we like it, we're entangled in this. And so how do we embrace that? How do we recognize that, any kind of thread that I tug on is going to inevitably affect everyone else, everything else around me, and how do I operate in this world with that understanding? And I think that if the more that we can do that, the more that we can recognize that there's so many reasons for us to care about our common person, the life around us, even if we can't see through our limited human vision how this other thing or this other person's well-being can affect us. Like that's a limitation of our minds, not of the universe around us.
That's so beautifully stated. Whoa, or just were you trying to say something? Or digital stuff. I'm still not all in it. If not, also fine. I guess it makes me think like how do we move towards greater safety for everyone? Like what are those pathways to like meaningfully really changing the material conditions of all people, whether you want to specify different categories again that we want to put people in, or just think about it as, we are all, there's a symbiosis, where we're all part of a thing that is meant to exist together. So what is safety for this large organism that needs different things and has different, ways into our world? So I guess when I think of that, I am also wondering, as our work as art makers, Is greater representation and like mainstream visibility, is that a pathway to safety by seeing ourselves on stage and screen and on walls and exhibitions? That feels like part of it. But it's complicated, right? And I feel like we were talking, I can't remember if I think it was Adriel, I think we were talking about the opening of Jollibee and what happened around the time of that and what that kind of meant, just like having an attack on, you know, a Filipino immigrant at the same time as the opening of a restaurant that is beloved. I mean, I guess I always thought of it as beloved. I guess not everyone like knows of Jollibee, but we're just like really excited for that to open. And then this horrible thing happens, and you want there to be more of a connection about like, you know, this opens and therefore safety is impending. But I guess I'm wondering how everyone else feels about that conversation, because it feels so both simple and complicated at the same time.
I can just really quickly contextualize that, you know, so Vilma Curry is the name of the person who was attacked in Times Square. And so many of us have seen the footage. I had to look through several links and dig deep into articles to find Vilma's name. You know, you can find the name of the perpetrator. You can find the name of like you know, find names of people who were bystanders much more easily than you can find the name of the person who was attacked. And you know, that same week there was a big announcement that Times Square, where that violence happened, you know, is also going to have its first Jollibee. You know, so many of us understand Jollibee as like this well-beloved fast food restaurant from the Philippines, and you know, in some ways, it's sort of this signal of representation, right? The signal of like, we're here, we made it to Times Square, but yet in that moment, you know, something happened that definitely showed that you can bring Filipino culture into the center of the universe, and that still, you know, the corporations, the capitalism isn't going to save us, right? So what will save us? And so that was basically the context of sort of the Jollibee thing happening at the same time that Vilma Curry was attacked.
What was I gonna say? A couple of things. Well, I just wanted to like point out some of the moments in the installation really that I still find unbelievable. Is the phrase, the slides that say "without police and without borders," right? That is still a radical statement and it's like blazing huge in the middle, you know, of the world right now, or whatever. Not the middle of the world. The world doesn't revolve around New York, but it's blazing huge. And I could never have imagined seeing that growing up as a kid. And now anybody who is in New York, I don't know, just on vacation, can absorb that information, or at least get the very idea that that's possible. And if those things are achievable or are achieved within our lifetime, that's a humongous societal transformation. So I think in terms of like tangible safety and security for all people, I feel like those two, let's start there. And the second thing, I think just looking at, you know, it's Pride Month, right? And I'm seeing so much visibility, and the trans community has been saying this forever, is that hypervisibility is dangerous if we do not have the resources and support and access to healthcare that we need. The queer community, the trans community in particular, it only puts folks in more danger if we don't have these protections. And I've been seeing a lot of people saying, you know, if only these corporations would put money to fight all of the anti-trans bills that are being pushed into our legislature right now. So I think we all know that visibility is not going to save us. It may afford us more resources, which can buy us more security, but that's always at the expense of another person as well. So it's like, we can't, like you said, we can't get free until we all get free in that way. Sorry, Jess, I think you were about to say something.
I really appreciated everything that Wo and Adriel both just brought up about this, and I've been thinking a lot about just like being someone who's an image maker, who's a public artist, and someone who makes films, that like representation and visibility, like it is healing in a way to finally have like Asian American stories, queer Asian stories finally being seen. But at the same time, like a lot of what has been happening is like deeply traumatic, and like I think a lot about how like the limits of art and the privileges of art, and how storytelling, like it can't bring back the dead, like the people who we have lost. There isn't a way to bring them back, but like art gives us the opportunity to like imagine another future, or like maybe somebody who has never seen a film before can watch a film where they are portrayed with complexity and with love, and then that might cause someone to choose to like live longer or something. And I think art does have a power in that, but I feel like until like at the end of the day, like sometimes I feel like obviously it is powerful to create like works of like speculative fiction or like science fiction where we see where we can imagine the future. But if our lived reality is so far away from that future, like sometimes I wonder, what does art do, and where does safety begin? And I think that it's going to be a long time before abolition and the ideas in this installation are reflected in our lived realities. But I think that safety begins in our minds, in our hearts, because when we live under U.S. imperialism, and we live in the gender binary and these borders and these carceral systems that we've been like brainwashed about since growing up. I think safety is like, we can find safety in our hearts by transcending these borders and binaries and elements of policing that have been fed to us by white supremacy and by the US empire. And I think like we can return to a space in our hearts that is without borders and without police. But I think all that relates to how none of us are free until all of us are free, because a lot of these concepts of abolition and like how we keep each other safe, Black and Indigenous folks have been practicing it for many generations, and I think that their leadership is like what makes this future possible. So now I think as Asian Americans, like we have to, in order to like create this future, we have to be uplifting and standing in solidarity with them, and we can start living these alternatives to safety that don't require that don't require the carceral state or policing, by practicing transformative justice in our daily lives and holding ourselves accountable. Yeah, so.
Amazing. And did you want us to show the video? I think you were going to cue. We've got a video on cue ready to go, Jess?
You're muted, but you're smiling, so I think you're saying.
I guess I was wondering, if I screen this video, is it going to be online forever?
Oh, we can take that down, but also we don't need to watch it right now. If
okay,
that's
I'm happy to watch to screen this clip. It's just a film that hasn't been shown in its entirety anywhere yet, but I'm happy to show this clip because Wo did an incredible job in it, and I feel like it is about chosen family and a lot of the things that we talked about. So yeah,
it's really beautiful about safety and family and who's there. So I'd love to watch this clip if we're ready to show that.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess for context, Little Sky is a film that I created in 2020 in collaboration with WO and a lot of members of the queer Asian community in New York. And this is just a clip from it, and hopefully it will be a part of the festival circuit this year. It's about a non-binary drag queen named Sky who confronts their estranged father about the childhood memories that used to haunt them, and about finding community and family in New York. Yeah.
I am 有多高，我会告诉你我有多真。不要问我星星有几个，我会告诉你很多。
Sorry, can we stop it here and skip to just like skip forward a little bit? Sorry, I realized this is the wrong part of, yeah. We can start again here. Yeah.
You get your all. You don't love now. There is no use in polarities or opposites, 'cause I found my truth between boy and girl. I'm shedding my skin. If no one sees my light, we'll still see each other's.
Yes, sneak preview.
Wow, so beautiful. I hadn't seen that part yet.
Oh, it's incredible.
I can't hear.
Thank you for watching. I don't know if that's smoothly. It goes when on my screen, but thank you for watching. Wo did a great job.
That was gorgeous. Thank you, Jess.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. You know, I didn't even realize it. We're already past 8, but that was a beautiful note to end on. So thank you, Adriel, Wo, and especially Jess, for making art the way you make it. Thank you for creating what you're creating, being who you're being. It's really so inspiring, and I'm just happy to be in community with all of you. And thank you for everyone watching this now or later. Please come to 42nd Street, see Jess's work on display, and also downtown. I mean, that gorgeous mural. You just I have to see it live in person. And please look out for more from under our Lighthouse program. Tomorrow is actually a huge day for Lighthouse, since we have a new piece from the Feather Theory called the Kill One Race coming out. So check it out. It's going to be unlike anything you've seen. And stay tuned for more in person from Playwrights Horizon soon. And if you're up for donating, it's been a really rough year and we're trying to create. You can text Lighthouse PH to 44321, or you can just visit phnyc.org/donate. And again, Jess, Woe, Adriel, thank you so much for everything. This is an incredible conversation, and I can't wait to just like follow all of your work all the time. So thank you all, and thanks to everyone watching. Take care.